maybe. Oh.
Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm here today on a Wednesday with our resident engineer, Mike Herzog. How's it going today, Mike?
Glad to be here, David. Sorry, we're a little later in the day than usual, but it's the holiday weekend started out here
Yes.
already. So.
Yeah. Today is Friendsgiving, the busiest drinking day of the year now. It's the number one day in America for alcohol consumption.
Okay.
Yeah, people, when their family starts showing up, they start drinking.
There you go.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't handle the relatives. I'm gonna get drunk. Yeah. So anyways, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So today, my first article is this comes from Barron's. China expected to hit peak coal consumption in 2025. So China is the world's largest consumer of fossil fuels, even though it's also the country with they definitely are big in green energy. They're big in hydroelectric. They're big in solar. They're big in wind.
Solar, they're the leaders in solar as well and putting it in. So that's hearing that they're going to crescendo and kind of peak in 2025 actually makes sense that they're on that path.
Yeah. So they're the largest greenhouse gas emitter, but they're heavily reliant on coal despite obtaining renewable energy capacity at record speed. There's signs the world's second biggest economy may be weaning itself off of fossil fuel. Coal power permits fell 83% in the first half of this year, and no new coal-based steelmaking projects were approved in the same period. You know, it's kind of funny. We probably have no steelmaking projects here in the United States either, but you know, it's interesting to see. I've heard one of the arguments is, you know, China is the great polluter, but they're making everything, and the United States is the great consumer of those things that they make that we consume. And so we blame them for being big in pollution, but the truth is, you know, if the stuff was made here, maybe we'd have the pollution here in the US, right?
Yep.
So, you know,
it's the Chinese coal boom over the past 10 to 15 years that's starting to slow down. I mean, that was always the big argument when we stopped permitting and building new coal here. It's at one time they were putting up like one a week.
Here?
No, in China.
In China, yeah.
Yeah, just because they were meeting demand. I mean, all the manufacturing, everything like that, it was just boom. But yeah, they've gone heavily into renewables. Well, I mean, not all, but dang near all the solar panels are made over there, and they're putting that stuff up really quickly at the same time. So it's just pivoting on their part of, you know, what's more cost effective and better long term in the future. But they put in a lot of coal. So it's interesting because it's one of those, it's not going to go away anytime soon, but it's just not putting up new ones at the same pace.
Well, and that helps, I suppose. Let's see. Achieving carbon neutrality in a rapidly growing economy like China is no easy feat, but the country's substantial efforts are starting to bear fruit. It's just hard to fathom. It's like, oh, they're still putting up more. It's just they're slowing down.
Slowing down. Yeah, it's still going in, and it's still everything they put in over the past couple of decades is going to be running for a long time into the future. It's just slowed down.
Yeah, they expect they'll still be increasing their carbon emissions all the way until 2030, and then very slow reductions after that. You know, this is some of the arguments we've seen that of why Republicans don't want, like, the Paris Accords or whatever, that it has to do with the fact that, you know, China and India are the big polluters. And they're talking about not wanting to really do anything. China's asked, I think, till 2040.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, that's a long time, but China's argument is the United States had all this time to do all this development, and they're still trying to catch up. And it's an argument that a lot of places have had. You've got these issues, and I've talked about this before. Like in Africa, it's like, okay, you can either be green or not use certain things, and you can, starve to death, or you can do this, and
Yeah.
you know, you,
Yeah.
you can be healthy but bad for the planet.
Yep. Yeah.
And
I'm curious. You said India there, and then the other big one. I mean, what are they saying? By 2050, Nigeria is going to be the first
Nigeria is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's and they God, their access to power on a daily basis. There's still huge swaths of that population that don't have reliable or any daily access to power. So it's what are they going to do? When those things start to pop up, and because coal's cheap. If you have access to it, and natural gas is cheap if you have access to it, and it's
right.
reliable and it's base load and it's been our workhorse for 100 years, 100 plus years that we've been, and so I get it, from their perspective of saying, well, you can't build your economy on that and then tell us we can't do it, not give us a chance. So I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough argument to be telling these, third world countries that they can't do something. And a lot of it is, it's like, well, then give them something, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
help them build the alternative.
Yep.
And there are a lot of green projects going on in a lot of third world countries that you really wouldn't expect, but it's, not exactly what one
It's
would
interesting
think.
because so much of it, you'd want to think it's out of the goodness of people's heart. It's supply chain. I mean, you have remote places, and if you don't have to ship fuel there, if you have a renewable source of fuel, it becomes a much more cost-effective project for them. So, yeah, it's kind of a twofer in a lot of those places, especially very very remote areas. We'll just build your grid here and keep it local and avoid a fuel supply chain issue that might pop up or could be disrupted very easily in the future.
Yeah, so let me see. According to an earlier report, China must set a strong but achievable target of reducing emissions by at least 30% by 2035. And that's a big number to try to reduce 30% when they're not even going to start reducing till at least 2030. That'd be a lot to come down 30% in 5 years. Oh well, but that's where China is at right now.
Huh.
Let's see. I wanted to go ahead and talk about something else. Oh, new study examines the impact of wind turbines on our visual landscape. Now, wind turbines aren't necessarily pretty, but they produce approximately 10% of all electricity in the United States. That's probably a lot more than most people would just imagine when you think about it. But if you drove through Iowa, you see them everywhere, right? And I actually have a visual representation of this.
Ooh, good.
Yeah,
Bring
and
out, bring out an example. I like it. Yeah,
let's see what we got
they're
here.
workhorses. I mean, they
Yeah,
really do well. I mean, they're clustered and where you find good spots for them. I mean, wind is a very good supplement to the power grid. Now it's tough
yeah.
to plan around because at least the sun's kind of predictable.
Mhm.
I can generally know it's going to rise. I generally know it's going to set. But boy, wind can be really really a tricky one and have impacts on it.
Okay, where the light green is, there's not a whole lot of wind turbines, but they exist. But where it start getting really dark, that's where there's really a lot of wind turbines. It's funny because if you look over here at California, this is kind of out in the like Palm Springs area here.
Yeah, that's open.
Um, yeah, I've flown into like LAX, and you drive out to Palm Springs from there. They're all down the damn freeway,
Mm-hmm.
and they're everywhere around. It is way windier out there than you would expect. It almost seemed like home because I was
Yeah.
playing a tennis tournament in Palm Springs, and I'm just kind of like, wow, I couldn't believe how windy it was there. And that's the one place where they've really got, or there's a couple places in California, but that in particular. But what's interesting is we know the Midwest is windy, right? Now,
Yep.
Chicago is called the Windy City. And if you look here, oddly, they don't have any in Chicago,
But all
but
around.
they got them all over Illinois. But Oh yeah, this is also a good name your state. I should quiz you on the states while I have this up.
I know,
No,
I
but
know. Around
yeah,
here.
but look at the one state that's all blue and green pretty much. That's
Yeah.
Iowa. Holy cow. They have a lot of wind
I
over in
haven't seen
Iowa.
this picture before, but I know we're exposed to it. We're very close to there, so yeah, we see it a lot. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of wind turbines, and it's good perspective to realize, a lot of the rest of the country's not like that.
Yeah, I
That's a
mean,
unique
it's
thing.
funny. Look at Arkansas down here.
Yeah,
So there's almost nothing. There's very little in Missouri. There's a little bit when you're up by the border of some of the other states that have a lot, but when you get down, there's nothing in Arkansas, nothing in Kentucky, Tennessee,
see,
all the
I wonder
southern
if this
states.
is so. Those are different power markets, and I
Yeah.
wonder. So Minnesota, Iowa, parts of Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, some of the Dakota. It was all a similar power market. The
Hmm.
mid continent power pool or something. MISO, I think it was. MRO is another space, and then Southwest power pools, all Kansas, Oklahoma, some parts of Colorado right there, northern Texas. So you wonder if
Hmm.
that had influence on those, where there's better payout, better rulemaking, something like that drove a lot of the early adoption in those spaces.
Well, look at
Now,
this is all Tennessee Valley Authority down here,
yeah,
and there's nothing. There's
yeah,
nothing. Now they have lots of nuclear power plants.
they have
There's
good
no.
hydro out there too. So you wonder if that's part of it. But so like we're in Nebraska, and it's a public power state, and this would have been like 20 plus years ago, 25. We
Mhm.
couldn't take advantage of some of the federal tax credits because our power producing entities don't pay taxes. We have payments in lieu of taxes and community support. So whereas they got a hell of a deal over in Iowa, and can produce, sell their power at a negative price. So pay somebody to offtake their power, and with all the supplements they
Mhm.
get from the funding, they can still make money off of it. So Iowa got a really really good deal, in Berkshire
It
Hathaway.
shows.
Mid American took advantage of it and did a great job with it.
Yeah, they've got a lot here. You know, it's funny when the Berkshire Hathaway annual convention is going on, they get a lot of hate. There'll be people out there protesting because their energy company owns so much in the way of coal plants.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, the wind's not blowing all the time, right?
Yep.
But you sure can generate a lot of wind in Minnesota and Iowa. It's interesting how it's all in south and southwest Minnesota. I mean, there's some light spots in other parts of the state. And
Yeah.
then you get up to North Dakota. I lived in North Dakota for a while. It is really freaking windy in North Dakota and
It's
South Dakota.
yeah.
The one
That
state I would imagine would have more is Wyoming. Wyoming here is one of the worst states to drive through just because it's so windy. Just going
so
down I-80, it's nerve-wracking with the car being pushed all the time from the wind. I can't imagine driving a tractor trailer with that big trailer just acting like a sail. I mean, the trucks be wobbling.
The eastern part of the state there. I mean, you don't hit the mountains till you get a little bit into the state. So you think it'd be flat and they'd have a really good profile for it. But I don't know. It could be there's
Like you're saying with the
so many
laws.
coal mines, like the Powder River basins
Mm-hmm.
right there. So I wonder if there's a lot of pushback, potentially from those of, keep the wind turbines out of our backyard. This is coal country.
Yeah, you don't see much in Utah. You see a bunch here in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
You see a bunch down here in Arizona. And then oddly, look at how much we got in Texas and Oklahoma. And now Texas is interesting. What do you have? Like 1,000 different power companies down there? I mean, look, South Texas along the Mexican border, you've got a lot down there. That's a pretty big cluster down there.
Yeah, I don't know if they do international power market. Like if we have a connection down to Mexico, that's something I don't know. Maybe that's part of what it is. They're exporting a lot of it.
That could be. That could be. It's just interesting to see because this is all here in like the Permian Basin, for oil, and it's just covered with with solar. Yeah, it's or I'm sorry, not solar, with wind. With wind. Yeah, be interesting to see a solar overlay
It would be
next.
cool to see that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
but
I mean, like your Arizonas and parts of Utah and New Mexico's. I know they're covered. I mean, they're doing very well down there with solar.
yeah, but look down here in New Mexico. It's
Yeah,
not really, Nevada doesn't have. Oh yeah, but you're talking about solar, but
solar.
not
Yeah,
not much in the way of wind
not
in
much
those
in the way of
states.
wind. Not much in the way of wind.
No, but anyways, it's just interesting to
Hmm.
see that visual representation.
Yeah, it's cool.
Not so much about dealing with whether they're ugly or not, but you know,
I didn't go through a lot of them, just on the side, but citing those facilities and public input and what it means and what is this going to look like, and there's a lot of opposition. However, they're very lucrative projects for landowners because it's a tiny footprint. It's just the base of it, and they can farm and ranch right up to the base of it, and they get a pretty good deal out of it when everything's said and done. So it's
nice.
the guy whose land it was going to be on versus the neighbors who have to look at it and see it's like, well, I'm going to make out like a bandit, kind of thing. And then everybody's, well, I don't want to look at that for the next 35 years. So yeah, there's a lot of give and take between those two parties, and
Yeah, well,
every time.
it's nice to see that there's efforts going on with some of that. We get hate for the green energy part sometimes, but they're doing it because it makes economic sense.
Yeah.
And but at different times, like with high interest rates, it doesn't make as good of an economic sense to put in more.
Nope.
Projects are still going on, but they definitely slowed them down.
Yep.
So, anyways, let's go on to discussion about Rivian. This is more RJ Scaringe, who's the CEO of Rivian.
Okay.
He's it's a story from an interview, kind of giving some opinions, and he says that the world doesn't need another Tesla, and but he does go on to talk about what a great company they are. But he says he sees few compelling sub $50,000 EVs. And he says he's amused by the interest in Scout. Now, it's interesting because Volkswagen owns Scout and bringing that out, but it's going to be a very similar looking vehicle. But, at the moment, I look at Rivians as being kind of similar to being a vehicle competing with Range Rovers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they've got that same look, and they're in the same ballpark on price, and you've got just the one big SUV, and you've got the pickup truck.
It's
they're
a
coming out.
SUV. It's a status symbol at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's very, very similar.
Now, but they are coming out with the R2 and the R3, which will be around or below that $50,000 price point. And a lot of people are excited about the R2. I think they're already up to close to 100,000 pre-orders.
Sales? Wow. Pretty
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And after they just had a $6.6 billion loan approved by the Department of Energy, and it'll allow them to produce 200,000 R2 and R3 vehicles annually.
Holy cow.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
So that'll really get them going. And it's really a nice thing to see. And of course, what state are they going to build that in?
It was one of the Carolinas.
Georgia, where everything else is going.
Yeah.
Georgia seems to be the leader in manufacturing and companies putting investments into the EV space.
I'm not surprised to hear their CEO say that. Well, I'm not, nothing below $50,000 is compelling to me. It's like, well, that's because you're not in that market. You have a very different product that's in that space, and would like to see it, thrive and do well. But yeah, they're fine. I mean, Rivian seems to keep doing well. Out of all the non-Teslas and car brands and what I would call EV only car brands, they seem to be the one that consistently has done well, has stayed towards the top and kind of understands where they fit in that space and what they're trying to do, and has a plan, and is, for what it's worth, is actually producing vehicles.
They're not profitable yet, but I think they're getting there. They're getting closer. And suppliers fear a world of Tesla owning 65% of the EV market forever, as Tesla's massive scale drives their supply chain wonderfully aggressively, Scaringe said, which is hard on suppliers. You know, it's interesting. So they had that 6.6 billion in from the Department of Energy as a loan. They got 5.8 billion from Volkswagen, or that's the commitment from Volkswagen. It allows them to do a lot of things and move further, you know, along to getting to production. I just don't see them going away. They were one of the companies, though, that their stock took a hit because Trump got elected. And I think some of it's due to the EV tax credit, but they're not a company that's been taking advantage of the EV tax credit. So we'll see where that goes. I want to pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act. So there's an article from Heat Map talking about Biden's climate law can't die. Wall Street loves it too much. And there's, you know, this is a very left-leaning news source, Heat Map is, okay? But their discussion on this topic has to do with the fact that for all of the investment that's been done, so there's been $78 billion in public spending towards investing in green manufacturing. Private entities have invested $493 billion.
Whoa.
So
wow.
it's almost 7 to 1.
7 to 1.
Yeah, almost 7 to 1. That's a huge amount of private investment that's come about because of the Inflation Reduction Act. And it's led to jobs. I think the estimates are that the Inflation Reduction Act has led to 130,000 green energy jobs, of which 90% have gone into Republican states.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just nobody, like I said before, nobody really knew what this law was doing. And after it was passed, there was some interesting things in it. And several Republican governors have really been, you know, showing favor towards, you know, this investment.
It's going to be interesting. And I've had this discussion with a lot of people because it comes up and it's like, gosh, are they going to scrap everything? What's going to happen? And you and I have been talking about it for a long time. Like, well, all the investment's gone into red states. So it's at some point, governors are going to be pushing back. You know, somebody's home district got that project is going to be reticent to, you know, cancel that in the future, pull out. I think there's going to be a big question about, you know, like the NEVI plan and some of these other funding sources that are just poster children of not spending government dollars and what it looks like. And so we gave you $40 billion and you put in eight chargers to date, you know, and I think some of that stuff might be on the chopping block.
When we know that most they spent 1.2 million for those 8 chargers, you know, and it gets kind of silly. But I saw people discussing that on Twitter today. You know, like that's on Pete Buttigieg for, you know, misspending that money. It's like, well, they didn't misspend the money. They didn't actually spend the money.
They just haven't spent it yet.
The 7.5 billion is not spent. It's still, the government still has it. But they have made commitments with it. They're going to put thousands of chargers out there. The money just hasn't been dispersed. Yeah, and it's kind of a weird situation because it's taken so long to do the paperwork and figure out exactly what was going on there.
Well, like in our state, the RFP just closed 3 weeks ago. You know, of just the first round of putting those out there. So, you know, they won't be spending any dollars on that till 2025. You know, at the earliest, and then they've got 3 or 4 more rounds to go before they spend our allocation. And we're not alone in that. I mean, a lot of other people are just slow out of the gate. But I think, you know, there's the potential big chunks of money like that just haven't been spent yet, have been allocated, earmarked, whatever you want to call it, that haven't been spent as almost more of a any word I'm trying to think of say here sounds very negative, but here's an example, here's a sacrifice. Hey, we came in, this is what we said we were going to do. You know, we're going to cut some of these spending items out, we're going to return it. You know, we're not going gung-ho into green investment, EV investment, but I just think there's so much of that money out there that's going to be hard to claw back, and pull back, or not continue investing in the future. It's done well. It's done well in too many areas.
Yeah, it's been committed, and and if the money's being spent well, that makes sense to keep it there, right?
Yeah.
But it's you can't say that about a lot of government.
No.
So I don't know. All right, so our next topic is something a little bit different. So in Colorado, a company called Excel, which is XCEL,
Yep.
they take the money from Colorado and they dispense the EV rebates, but they just ran out of money for the EV rebates, and we've still got 5 weeks to go in the year, and I just thought that was kind of interesting. There's already 100 people with rebate approvals but no checks, and it's interesting to see that they simply ran out of money. Colorado had really good rebates. I mean, we did an article a while back with somebody buying a Nissan Leaf for $7,700, and they got $7,000 in tax credits.
Holy smokes!
And they only paid $700 for it.
Wow.
Yeah. If EVs are stopped in the U.S., American consumers will be the ones hurt. The first time Americans will be left behind in a technology created here. Yeah, it's fascinating how that's going on worldwide. I mean, if you look at the GM EV1, and then you look at some of the other things that have gone on over the years, but you look at how much of the EV space has been dominated by Tesla, and wouldn't exist if it weren't for Tesla. And yeah, it's but EVs aren't going to stop in the US.
No, I think we're okay. Yep.
Yeah, I think we're past that point already, where the government incentives are what's necessary, because prices keep coming down on the EVs, and so it really long term it might set it back, make it a little slower for a year or two, but it'll just come charging
the market's there
again.
It's there. Yeah, and it excels the power company out in Colorado, one of the big ones, and they're in Minnesota, and all they're huge conglomerates. So pretty typical model of, if just utility, you are set up for this, for dispensing rebates, for having these programs, just administer this program for us. It's just kind of interesting that if they didn't manage it well, they've got this big line of people coming out the door of like, hey, I filled out my application, where's my check? So sorry, we ran out. It's good news, though. It's great news that people are adopting that and moving in that space.
Oh, no. It makes for interesting news, if nothing else. All right, so we're going to move on to the next one. Parents say electric school buses make children happier, survey finds. Now, in the words of our current vice president, everybody loves yellow school buses. And so it's funny because we've done a few videos on buses, and I have people comment stuff like, I've never heard of any kid caring about diesel, or the kids aren't being harmed by the pollution or whatever. And it's like, oh God, you don't think they're being harmed by smelling diesel exhaust? But
it is. If you can remember back when people say you've got a really strong connection to smell, as a sense, it brings you back to a time. It is a unique smell. The smell of a leather seat or pleather seat school bus mixed with diesel fumes and 30 sweaty elementary school. Yeah, it's a very unique smell, and it's diesel's the driving force. And they're like, oh yeah,
diesel's the main thing you smell. Yeah, it's just funny. It's like, well, yeah, I remember the smell. It's probably not a good thing I was snorting diesel fumes all that time. Yeah. So almost 2/3, 65% of U.S. parents would prefer their child ride on an electric school bus rather than diesel powered, according to a new survey. I thought that was kind of amusing, what parents want their kid to ride on. 63%, this was a poll conducted by Highland Electric Fleets. This was also found a similar figure of 63% of parents surveyed believe their child would be happier commuting to school on an electric school bus. And the survey data was largely tied to parents' concerns about their children's health. 68% said they believed their child's overall physical health would improve as a result of riding an electric bus to school. And 89% ranked air quality and a safe and healthy commute to school among their highest concerns. I find that kind of funny, because that means then that about 35% of parents don't care.
Yeah.
Or they're just being obstinate. They're more likely just being obstinate about it.
Those fumes my entire childhood, and I'm fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah. But it is funny. A key factor in the transition to electric school buses is the $5 billion in clean energy electric school buses allocated through the passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act in 2021. Now, what's funny is that piece of legislation, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, I'm not sure that it was bipartisan, but it is in the name. If you need to be bipartisan, you better name it that, right? Oh man, it's like, how would you like to have that job for the government? We've got this dumb new law. What should we name it?
Make it sound something good.
Yeah, you just have, you can make one of those name generators that you got, the list of clean, common, or common sense, a few other words.
If you can turn it into an acronym, that would be great.
The third word could be act, it could be law, it could be standard, it could be all these things like that.
I'm sure bipartisan just means one or two people, from the other side voted for it. It's
right.
Yeah.
And the downtime, the buses can supply power to the grid to generate income. Yeah, well, we're headed there. We're certainly headed into the V2G space, and the ability to sell power is going to be interesting, to be able to take the power cheap and then arbitrage it out at a different time of the day and sell it.
They're looking at it. I mean, that's especially school buses, because they all park at the same spot, and all of a sudden you put a lot of batteries in that same interconnection point, and it's noticeable. I mean, you're talking megawatts of power that you can actually supply to the grid, from something like that. So it's not there. It's not there. But it's moving towards it. There's test cases and pilots that people are looking at, but it's a neat concept for sure.
We're also hearing from parents who have children with disabilities, because some of the loudest and most vocal advocates, because their anxiety levels decrease on an electric school bus. The buses are quieter and they have smoother journeys. It's a huge upgrade in terms of their ability to get to school and hit the ground running productively. It's interesting because it doesn't, the tailpipe pollution can trigger asthma attacks, contribute to cancer, and interfere with our children's ability to learn. Never really thought about the asthma thing. I haven't put a lot of thought into that, but it is an issue with the gas-powered school buses that will be mostly fixed by doing electric. So you're still going to have vehicles on the road that are still spouting fumes, just not as much as that diesel truck. Let's see here. All right. I've got another article that's talking about, has electric car range anxiety finally bitten the dust? Now, this is talking about in the UK, that the latest statistics show that just 1.85% of all callouts for their equivalent of AAA were related to flat batteries for electric cars. Now, gas cars, have about a 1% of issues on gas cars are because the car ran out of gas. Okay. EVs are at 1.85% currently, but 5 years ago it was at 8%.
Whoa.
For the EVs. Yeah, so that number keeps going down. I think a lot of it is the EV owners will start figuring out where to charge.
Yeah, they know what to do, or have a much better handle.
Yeah, there's better network for
I'm
it.
going slightly farther than I normally do tomorrow. I'd better charge it at home, the night before.
Right.
I better have this figured out, because I drive an EV. It fluctuates. So where we're at in the part of the country, it got cold finally the past week. And those first couple of days where you wake up in the morning and it's parked in a garage, but it's 30 degrees out, 28 degrees out. That mileage drops immediately when it senses that temperature and cold. And yeah, I get it. There's still some anxiety around that and trying to figure it out. It just fluctuates so wildly with the temperature, at least around here. For at least my car, maybe others have got it figured out, but it can be a little scary that first time. Holy crap! Like I just lost 40 miles, going around the block. It's something.
Wow, that's a pretty quick. Well, I guess it just starts to register, right, and adjust.
Checked, just because I've had it for a couple of years and I've lost more mileage than I would like to see, just on a max charge.
All right. Let's see. 2 in 5 drivers worry about the risk of breaking down with no charge, but it affects a very small amount of motorists. Like they were saying that of all of their call outs, and there's an organization in the UK, it's just called AA, and they get about 8,000 breakdowns a day. But they said that often when they're called up for a flat battery, the real reason is the car simply won't charge. It's different to the people. It wasn't that the people just couldn't find a place to charge. That something was wrong, and in some cases, if you go to some charging stations, somebody's cut the cord, or for some reason you just can't charge, and that's part of it as well. 1% of their call outs are for combustion cars running on petrol and diesel running out of fuel. Let's see.
I'm surprised that number's not higher.
Yeah, you just imagine more people running out of gas.
I just imagine more people running out of gas. And if it's a call out service or a breakdown service, I would think it would be more than 1%, but that's just me.
Yeah, you just never know. The United Kingdom has almost 1 million electric car chargers, helping keep pace with drivers' needs, although the car industry is still keen on the rollout of more and faster models. Most of the chargers were fitted in homes. Oh, there's only 65,000 open to the public.
Oh, so that's all the public and private. Okay, so
I thought, man, that's a big number, compared to like the U.S. But 65,000 public chargers. Anyways, that's a pretty good start. All right, so our final topic for today, we're back to the topic of electric aviation. So this article I've got, what's funny is our last talk about aviation on here, we were talking about the Aviation Alice. This sure looks like the Aviation Alice because that's the way its wings look, and that's the way it's got its propellers right there. And it basically looks like that. This article is talking about the challenges facing electric aviation with weight, range, ownership costs, and carbon footprint all needing to be considered. But here we've got this little chart. So for general aviation, business jets, commercial single aisle, commercial twin aisle style vehicle. It's interesting to get this twin aisle. It seats 200 to 500 people. And
those are the
with a range of about 5,000 to 11,000 miles. Now, what they did was they're using the amount of electricity. If you took the gas and converted it to electricity, how much it's using. But the big one is using 500 to 760 megawatt hours of power.
That's so much power. That's crazy.
Yeah, now of course they're using it from Jet A1, but this is the equivalent amount of power they're using. You get to a commercial single aisle, it's not even close. It's like 80 to 130. It's like 1/5 as much as that big twin aisle vehicle. Then you get down to a business jet. You drop down from 80 megawatt hours to 5. Well, it says 5 to 110 because you could have a pretty big business jet. And then when you get down to just general aviation, 2 to 10 seats, you can be anywhere from 250 kilowatt hours to 1 megawatt.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's a much smaller number there, but Now, once again, those numbers are expressed in electrical units, but they're taking the gasoline or jet fuel
They're
numbers and converting it to electricity.
So like the rule of thumb, or just high level visualization, about 1 megawatt of on power demand and about 4 megawatt hours is a 40-foot shipping container. I mean, just standard, just use that as visualization. Now that's not optimized for a vehicle or a plane or anything like that. But so when you talk about those jumbo jets requiring, 500 megawatt hours, that's 100 shipping containers worth of batteries that they would need under today's technology to get forward. So you can see where that might be a limitation on something like that.
Yeah. So avgas is energy dense at around 43 megajoules per kilogram, or 12 kilowatt hours per kilogram. Okay, for jet fuel. The best battery technologies are 0.3 kilowatt hours per kilogram. So that's 0.3 versus 12.
12.
Yeah, so you have almost
that'll
40 times the density of energy. So you need 40 times as much weight in batteries to produce the same amount of energy in the plane. Electric propulsion is more efficient, which helps to offset the deficit, but not enough. Electric planes end up being heavier than their internal combustion rivals, while also having significant range reductions, typically in the range of 80 to 90% less range.
80 to 90%.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why when we've looked at applications for electric aircraft, it's either short hop commuter, like going 100 miles or something like that, or pilot school.
Training. Yeah.
Yeah. Training flights.
Yep.
And that's where the real benefit is.
Quite a bit a while back. And that was his idea of just the amount of hours you have to put in and the cost of fuel and cost of running a plane that becoming a licensed pilot is just out of reach for a lot of people. Whereas, well, if you could do a lot of your hours on a little EV plane that's going to run for 40 or 50 minutes and that's it, and it's not going to go far. I mean, that's a huge cost reduction in the overall O&M of running that, and just people trying to get their pilot's license. But with the energy density, it's just not there. It's not feasible.
Our only electric aviation in the U.S. at the moment is the Pipistrel, which is that little two-seat electric aircraft that's designed really for using as a trainer.
Yeah.
And that's the only one. I mean, there's a lot of other experimental products. Like I was saying on the cover, this is what the Aviation Alice looks like, which wouldn't surprise me if that is what that picture is supposed to be. Let's see.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of places. So the one that always comes to mind for me, like the Virgin Islands, where it's you have a little 100-mile commute, 50 to 100-mile commute between even sides of the island, between a couple of the islands, and what it looks like. And they've got a pretty good ferry system at this point. But if you wanted to skip all that and go quick, it seems like that's not a bad application either. Where you have a fixed route, you know where you're going, you're going to fly back and forth between these as a very much commuter route. That your only alternative right now is a ferry. Really, it's. But I want to cut the time of that travel by a third or a fourth. Like, I could see that as a viable future for an electric aviation type vehicle.
Yeah, well, obviously, the big discussion I've had with people is using it for short hops, like from island to island in an island nation, down in the Caribbean kind of thing. But any type of short-term commuter one that's not going to fly more than 200 miles makes a lot of sense to do
like
electrically.
Los Angeles, where you see so many damn helicopters, people taking private helicopters and everything like that. Like, okay, yeah, I could see that. If you can do a vertical takeoff and figure out how to make that work with those, like, sure, yeah, that's a potential use.
Well, you got so many companies like Joby and Archer that are making those eVTOLs.
Yeah,
those are cool. As an alternative to helicopter transport. That's a pretty big benefit. anyways, that was all I had for today. We still had a fairly long show today.
Mhm.
Anyways, folks, I want to thank people for watching in, and want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And I will be back with Bill on Tuesday and Mike on Wednesday next week. Otherwise, enjoy the holidays.